I want to give you a couple examples of what the double ABCX might look like in real life to help you understand it better. um, let's say your family and you have grandma, and grandma's gotten older. She goes to the doctor, and the doctor says, Grandma, you cannot live alone anymore. You need to move in with your kid. Okay, so stressor for the kid, the adult kid. Maybe it's her mom, and she's got, hubby and kids, and now her mom needs to move in with them. That's the stressor. Okay, so you're going to look at it and think about the stressor itself. It was kind of an immediate thing, so there wasn't a lot of time to plan. It's something that is going to impact everybody in the system. So then you look at resources. What resources do you have? Okay, Granny needs to move. Um, you need to figure out where to put her. This is going to be an issue. You maybe have to have two of your kids bunk in the same room again so Granny can be there. Is it time-wise? Do you have resources to help her out? She comes, can she be alone, or does she need someone there? Perception is going to be really interesting. Everybody will have a different perception, perhaps. What is Granny's perception? She's been the captain of her own boat her whole life, probably. She's run her own, and now she's moving in. It's not her home. It's not her kitchen. Is she happy to be coming? Is she thinking this is the beginning of the end for her? What's her view? What are the parents' view? How do they see this? Maybe mom might see this. She's my mother. Of course we have to do it. And dad might be like, whatever. And the kids might be excited because they like Granny, or they might be mad because they have to share a room. So there's different perceptions. Crisis. Now, crisis doesn't have to be huge, but it has to be something where the system has to change. Granny coming into this home and living here permanently is going to be a big change. So the crisis is the family. How do they adapt? What do they do to make it livable for Granny? So then we go to, that's all pre-crisis. The second half of the model is post-crisis. So now we're going to little a, big A. Pileups, hardships. There's hardships that come because of Granny having to move in. Right. So maybe they need to put up rails in the bathroom, a ramp if she's wheelchair bound, or if she, can't walk well. Do they need to alter their schedule so they could be there for her? Do they need, again, to build out, to make a little granny flat, or do they just need to kick one of the kids in with the other kids? There's going to be hardships because of this. Hardships don't mean things hardships are just additional things that happen. Now, sometimes there's a normative transition at the same time. That's a normative transition are things you would expect to have happen. Maybe mom finds out she's pregnant. Woohoo. And that's a normative transition at the same time. It's something that you have to deal with while you're dealing with the primary thing you're talking about. Sometimes the transition might be retirement. Maybe mom and dad were going to retire at this time, and maybe they have to relook at that if they can reconfigure a house. So that would be, you could look at all of those as the little a, big A, but they are things that generally happen because of the crisis, the stressor and the crisis. Then we're going to go back to resources again. What resources do they have now? Sometimes we had them before and we didn't use them because we didn't think it was a big deal. Sometimes we did. So what resources do they have now that she's moved in to help? Okay. And then perception. This is perception. The first perception was of the stressor, Granny moving in. This is the perception of the crisis. How do they feel about that? How do they feel about how things have been going? Are they maybe now going, it's not so bad bunking with my sister, or now the kids don't get along because they should never have been in that close of proximity. Yeah. So you kind of look at that. And then you're going to look at little x, big X adaptation? Did they maladapt or bonadapt? If you use your resources and you manage your perceptions to not be horrific, magnified perception of something, you can mitigate some of the challenges, and you learn to work together. A big one in resources is the family resources, and that's a family system. How well you come together. You look at two continuums. You look at the continuum of adaptability, flexibility. How flexible is a system? A very rigid system has a very hard time with change, really hard. And then a chaotic system is problematic in that things keep changing all the time. You can't grasp it, right? So you want to be kind of in the middle, flexible enough to make changes you need to change. Cohesion, that continuum. Are you guys connected? Okay, one end is where you are so connected, you're enmeshed. And problem with enmeshment is there's no additional ideas. We all have the same think. So that's not very useful coming together. And the other is disengagement, where you're not connected at all. And so that's really hard to come together and make some change. So if you've worked that one out, and in terms of the resources particularly, that will benefit you. Let me give you another example. Okay, stressor. I talked about this at office hours. Irving, 16 years old, he went to his friend's house, got to use the family car for the first time, drank at his friend's house, came home drunk. Okay, so resources. Now, one you might think is the usual is the family systems resource, where the parents might have a discussion about this and hopefully be on the same page. Maybe. Okay, if they're on the same page, you'll come up with some ways to manage this, right? But let's say perception-wise, one of them, let's say dad's like, I used to do it all the time and nothing's going to happen. You won't do it again, right, Irving? You won't? Oh, yeah, he said he won't. It's okay. He said he won't. So it's not an issue. Maybe mom's like, no, this is an issue. It's his first time out. He drank and he drove and dad's like, no. So we're into denial and avoidance, right? It's fine. He said it's fine. It's going to be fine. Don't worry about it. Okay. So then the crisis is a DUI. That would be the nicer of the crisis that could happen. So he gets a DUI. Okay. That now we've been through pre-crisis. Now we're in post-crisis, little a, big A. Okay. Hardships. Where do we begin? You need a lawyer. You need money. Your insurance is going to go up. He may lose his license. If he loses his license, let's say he takes his little sister to soccer practice. He can't do that anymore. So now you have to figure that out. Have to come up with money, court fees, have to go to court. Maybe you have to take off work to go to court with him. There's a variety of hardships that go on. Prior strains, you'll see one of those. In this case, you could have a prior strain. Let's say mom's parent, one of her parents was alcoholic. So this is bringing up a whole lot of stuff that she's seen in the past. So that comes up. Moving to resources. Okay, are you now on the same page? Your family systems resources, do you now agree that this is an issue? That would be useful because you can come together and say, okay, what is the consequence of this? Is he going to lose the car for a month? Is he going to, certainly we'll have community service and let's make him take the bus. Certainly he doesn't get to drive to it because he's lost his license. So there's a variety of things there in resources that maybe you're willing to use now. Okay. Perception. Are we viewing this differently? Maybe now dad's like, yeah, he didn't learn. And mom's like, told you so. And maybe the kid is, hopefully like, yeah, you're right. Or he may be a kid and 16 and still not thinking you're right. But there's perception of the crisis. What do they think of the DUI? It is going to be a pain in the butt for the family, particularly the parents, because they have to attend things with him. And then little X, big X, did they maladapt or bonadapt? If they've come together and started figuring things out as a couple, parenting as a couple, using their resources that they have, maybe they have a friend who knows an attorney who's not as expensive, those kind of things. If their perception has changed, they probably bond adapted. So the next time an issue comes up in that family, they already know how to come together and talk about it. And they already think, okay, what do we need to do? Let's not, go, it's going away, maybe. So that's how that goes. let's see, what else? I had a client who um, worked for a corporation, and the corporation announced that it was going to merge with another one. Well, when you merge two corporations, you don't need as many people, right? And she was in middle management. And so the stressor was they were going to merge and they weren't going to need everybody. Resources. Now, for her, she had a savings account. She always lived within her means. She had money put away. And they were going to give out a really nice retirement package or separation package for those that wanted it. The other resource is that the work she did, she knew there was more she could find. She'd already been people had called her headhunters saying, hey, you want to come over into our corporation? So she wasn't worried about that. So her perception was, this is going to be inconvenient, but I've always wanted to do this business thing I want to do. And I will have enough money to live without working for a year. So this is really an opportunity for me to do something. And so the crisis for her is very minimal. Crisis in the sense of, yeah, she's going to have to make some changes. She's going to have to rethink a little of her budget, allocate what she's going to put out, make some adjustments, but it's not huge. And then she would go on the next part. Post-crisis would be very different for hers. The hardships from doing that, I mean, she will have to set up a whole business and do some things, and that's challenging. She may or may not have resources for that. How she views it after the crisis. Actually, when I talked to her, she was still pretty happy about it. And I would say she bond adapted. Now she had colleagues. Okay. When they got this stressor, they were totally stressed because they lived beyond their means. They paycheck to paycheck. The corporation already had two of their position, and there were three of them vying for one, right? So they were freaked out, and they didn't have resources, and they didn't have a plan B, and their perception was, oh my God, the world's going to end, I'm going to die. Their crisis was far greater because they really were deer in the headlights. I don't know what I'm going to do if they don't pick me. And so their pileups might be the hardships, having to downsize, find a new place to live that's cheaper, get rid of things that they could get rid of to save money, start looking for a new job that could pay them enough to keep the rent up. And so you see their hardships would be different than hers because she already was pretty okay with this. And their resources, I doubt they got any new ones, but hopefully they did. Maybe they could get a loan to move or whatever they needed to. Their perception, I'm sure, was probably still they're grieving their lifestyle because they had to change it and it was a loss and things like that. So that's how that would work. So you see, it's a progression. You have the first half of the model pre-crisis. You have a stressor. You have resources or not resources, and you need to look at that. Sometimes we have them, we don't use them. Sometimes we got a rich Uncle Charlie, we don't ask for a loan. Sometimes we have insurance, sometimes we don't. Sometimes we have friends. Remember your social resources, instrumental people who do things. Let's say the stressor is, this may happen for some of you, you are, you live in a place, the landlord says you rent, and they say, hey, I'm going to sell the place. You need to be out in a month. You're like, okay. So we see that's a huge stressor. Resources. Do you have the time to look for a place? Now, if you have friends with a truck that are willing to move you, that's a huge resource. Do you have, in my case, once I had a dog and there was hard to find a place that would take a dog. The perception might be, we're doomed, or this is going to be horrific. It's going to be a challenge, or we will do whatever it takes. I could find a place. I will look in the newspaper. I'm going to use my resources, but the perception might be this is just beyond. I might just be staring like a deer in the headlights for a little while. And then crisis would be, it's a huge change to the system. You have to move, you have to find a place, you have to reallocate money. That's big. Post-crisis, hardships. Okay, so the hardships are the things you do have to do. And if you think about all the things you have to do when you move, the things you have to set up, the money you have to come up first, last, and cleaning. You have to come up with a lot of resource a lot of financial resources. So the hardship is trying to come up with that. The actual move, finding a neighborhood that you're comfortable in, how far is it from work? There's a lot of things. Perception of the crisis is the move, right? The crisis is having to move. Perception of that is I miss my old place, maybe I'm still grieving that, or maybe it's I found an okay place now, this will do for now. Okay, and then maladapt or bonadapt. And that's an individual, but we're looking kind of more at families, but that's just an example. Dad hears that he's got a job in Toledo. He's excited. Okay, so his family's going to move to Toledo. Resources, who's going to pay for the move? Is the company going to pay for the move? How are they going to allocate it? Is he going to go ahead and family will come later? There's a lot of strategic things and resources that have to be dealt with while they're doing that. Timing. Are the kids in school? All of that. Perception. Dad's like, woohoo, I've always wanted this. Mom might be happy because she's like, man, I could just work part-time with the money he's making. Kids probably say they hate us. We don't want to move. Our friends are here. We're in school here. We're not happy. And we're going to let you know how unhappy we are. The crisis might be they move and the kids start ditching school and acting out, let's say, because there's that unhappy. So you go to the second half of the model, hardships. Well, the hardships, first of all, is you have to relocate. You have to find everything, find a school district, find places, if you're smart, for kids to do things. You have to make the general move, the unpacking, just general. You move to a whole new state, you go, where's the bank? Where's the grocery store? Who in here has a pediatrician they like? You have a lot of things to do. So you're really busy doing that. That's a hardship. You might have a normative transition, maybe at the same time. Grandma has to come move. Let's just add her to the mix, is going to move in with you. That would be pretty tough too. So you get into resources then. Resources, find something for the kids to do. Put them in the Y, put them in a soccer thing, put them in places where they'll make friends. The ones that's not and is skipping school, family counseling, they're angry. Let's let them talk about their anger. Let's deal with it as a family, not just tell them to suck it up, which oftentimes that's what kids are told. And so there's that whole part of resources, perception of the move and after. Kids might be settled in, they still might not be. Dad has a perception of, he may still think this is, the best thing since sliced bread. Mom might be reconsidering some of the challenges she's going to have now with the kids. But if mom and dad come together, again, in your family systems resources, they come together, they figure it out, they counterbalance, like, okay, I'll be in charge of the kids, I'll be in charge of this, you'll back me up, those kind of things. They work out that co-parenting particularly. And they find a lot of resources. So the kids maybe are established in some things. And after 3 months, they're not so unhappy. Maybe they find a way for them to go home on summer break to visit their friends. They talk about that's an option. So there are things you could maybe do. And then that would be they bond adapted. They came together, they used the resources. That's better. You could have a stressor could be an illness, a stressor could be the death. If it's someone died, because sometimes that just happens, right? The crisis is going to be possibly how the family handled it. Because, wills are not pretty. Families are not, often they're pretty strange when it comes to that piece. So there's a lot of different variations. Just remember, you have to go through all the pieces. So when you're taking these two prompts, what is the stressor? Put it out there, fluff it up. You're going to create it. Who are these people? Tell me about them. And which one you pick, that's the stressor. Talk about that stressor, what that means in these people's lives. Do they have resources? You can give them resources. You cannot give them resources, but you need to talk about it. And we're not just financial, but we're social systems resources, family system resources. How is that family connected, not connected, flexible, not flexible? Everybody's perceptions of the stressor, and then the crisis. And then you're going to go on to post-crisis, little a, big A, the pileups, the hardships, if they're normative transitions, whatever you want to put. Resources again, like now, do we have any new ones? Sometimes we get something that we need. If the COVID one, maybe the COVID bill will come through. I mean, there's a variety of things you can look at or create. Perception, okay. What's a perception? So the one, testing positive for COVID was a stressor, hospitalization was the crisis. So now when you get to the second perception, little c, big C, your perception is of the hospital, hospitalization. And then did you bond adapt? So I hope this helps a little bit in understanding the process. And that might make it a little bit easier to try to do what you want to do, right? Because I know you need to do this. All right. So until next time.